Well, good afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. This is Humanize IT, and today we have a special guest, Coach Hess. And Coach is a little bit different of a guest for us. Usually, we're having technology providers. We've had professors, we've had doctoral candidates on this show, but now we have a coach. And as an all-American myself, like I should probably have more coaches on this podcast, but I just don't. So, Coach, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your history? And in this episode, we're covering why your why matters. Like, why is this important to you? Why is this topic important to you?
Yeah, critical, critical. Thank you, Adam, and thank you so much for having me on the show. This is a thrill for me. Um, yeah, my coaching career started when I was about 21 years old. I graduated from the University of Calgary as a basketball player and did quite well on the basketball court and got an opportunity to be teaching social sciences at the high school level and became a head coach at a high school 21 and did real well with that for about 8 years in Calgary and ended up becoming a head coach of basketball as well down in Southern California in a place called Westlake Village. Knocked that out in 3 years. I sent 5 guys to Division I out of the program, did really well and building up a strong program there. And then I got an opportunity to go do an MBA at California Lutheran University under a guy named Mike Dunlap. And of course, I was a little into the technology, and so I said, I'm maybe not going to do any more in education here. I think I'm going to have to think of something else. So I sharpened my saw a little bit, Adam. I rode my bike from Jasper, Alberta, to to Thousand Oaks, California, 22 days on the road, and it's solo, no support. Um,
Man,
yeah, yeah. So it was quite a ride, and I came to the conclusion that the command line of DOS was going away, and the GUI interface was coming on full speed, and I better pay attention. And
yep.
so I did my MBA in business process reengineering, and I spent 30 plus years in business, chasing a learning curve of that kind of technologies. What's being changed, and so I had a great career in that. I ended up being the head or the chief advisor for cloud services at a company called Halliburton. And at that time, about 8 years ago, I got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that was a bit of a shock, kind of a setback. And I got hundreds and hundreds of messages that told me I made a difference in their lives by being a mentor and a coach. And guess what? I decided the big guy upstairs kept me around for a reason, and that was it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years, and it's been a fantastic ride. And it's nice to have a little bit of the tech background for your show, but that gives you a quick summary and Cole's version of how I ended up being a business coach for the last 8 years.
Man, that's crazy. I see you were in AI. I was in AI as well, but I went track instead of football.
Right,
Adam Walter came into the college world, 226.6. I was a stick on the wind, but they put some meat on me, and I did really well in track. And I was like, man, I should have done football, knowing how big I am.
right.
So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about this why's your why? What's your why?
You know,
Why is the why important? Like, we talked about this a little bit before the program, like being a Cynic fan, but the why goes back way farther than Cynic, Simon Cynic. It goes back, like, for me, it
right,
goes back to like 1984 and the goal.
right.
For you, like, why is the why important? Why is this an important topic to you, given the variety of experience you've had in life? Where does this kind of fill in? So give us a little bit of a context around why is your why important?
Well, I think first of all, we find it almost in an innate nature at a very young age, and we pursue it and don't know it necessarily as our guiding force. That was certainly my experience. Um, as I was going through this pancreatic cancer deal that I mentioned earlier, I started, they want you to walk around. You haven't got surgery, they want you to get moving. And so I'm walking around the hallways, and I got the tubes and everything and hanging on to me. And I take 10 steps the first time and 15 the next and whatever. I start looking at everybody's rooms and I'm looking in people's rooms and they're not moving from when I come one to the next and next. I'm going, what's going on? It's kind of a morbid place because this type of surgery is not so good. So
Yeah.
what did I do? I started walking into people's rooms and nudging them and saying, hey, what's going on? What do you got going? And I did that to 10 different people while I was on that floor. And what I found out was that these people's last kind of thing in their lives. I mean, their deathbed stuff, all right? They were all about family.
Yeah,
Family mattered more to them than anything at that point in your life. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So when I left, and I was able to leave the hospital, I was about 14 days or whatever, they were rolling me out. A lot of these people that hadn't been out of bed were at their doors clapping, and I thought, well, geez, isn't that interesting? People are kind of got some energy going in people that maybe they didn't have. It's so mindset oriented to beat cancer. I know that, and I certainly took it on that way. So as I left that and I started thinking about what is with me? Why am I like that? I really dug in deep. And I remembered when I was 8 years old, finally, I had a basketball in the middle of the floor. I'm dribbling down the floor, the squeaking shoes, make a fake, throw a pass to my partner. He scores the layup, and we win the game. That moment, that time of passing an assist, finding joy in a group of people is what I've pursued all my life.
that's awesome.
And that's how and I didn't figure that out till I was 62 years old, Adam. Come
So
on.
sometimes those neurons take a little while to connect, you know? Yeah, I remember doing the same thing in soccer where I remember, it was right about when I was 8 years old as well. It must be something about that magic age.
Yeah.
And I remember, running down the field because I was really fast. For a tall kid, I had those good legs, I was fast. And I remember instead of taking the shot myself, I passed it over to Brian, this kid that was on our team who's really good, and he kicked it in for the goal.
Yeah.
And that became a core part of who I was. I liked helping others win.
Yeah.
And, on our basketball team in high school, I remember we were really struggling to win. And we had one teammate who would score probably over 50% of our points every game. And when that guy started passing, we started winning more.
Yeah.
And it was this like it didn't depend on one person having a good game or bad game or one person being shut down. It became the team's effort put us forward. And now, like, how are we becoming a better team? Because we're working together.
Right.
Is our goal here to make one person good, or is our goal here to make the team better? Why are we doing this? Because we want to play as a team to win. We like to win. And so that was a really big game changer in my mind. It's like, oh, you don't have one good player, you have 10 good players.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Well,
what
that's
advice would you give somebody running a company right now?
yeah.
Like, how
Same
would you
question.
apply that concept to somebody running a business right now who's maybe struggling a little bit with their leadership role, having a little imposter syndrome? How do they apply this like lesson life that you've connected on on your supposed deathbed or area, around these people and your 8-year-old self matching up with your 60-year-old self? They can, oh my gosh. So how does a business owner see
Right.
this and use this to change their mindset?
Yeah. Well, individually, I think you've got to dig into what your real purpose is in terms of what you're doing in your business, right? And why you're doing your business. I mean, good golly, if it's I'm just here making money and I'm taking care of putting food on the table for my family and I'm coming and going and you don't have the passion into what's going on, you're gonna have some problems. I mean, you spend a lot of time together working, and as a leader of an MSP, for example, or a leader of a group, the more you know about the people on your team and what their whys are about and what they're really passionate about, the more successful you will be as a team. I was at Halliburton. I just had I've had a tremendous outrush of leadership that came after the fact. One of the individuals that was working for me, a guy right out of college, was doing some marketing stuff and so on. But we were running the hosting environment for Halliburton and Landmark and pushing out all the big geophysics apps and so on through our cloud, so to say. And I can go into the technology of that later. But I mean, the idea was that this young guy came in and I said, you know what? I looked at our program. He said, maybe an MBA is a good thing for you in terms of your future. Here's what Halliburton can do to make that happen. Well, I was thrilled with it, and he came back into my office and said, yeah, I want to do that, coach. Let's go. And so I set up, and sure enough, he knocked it out and so on. And eventually he started moving up the ladder. He then moved to Google. Then he went on to Google, and he's been doing very, very well at Google for a while. I just called to invite him to my 70th year birthday coming up that just happened. And when I called him up, he said, Coach, you better be sitting down. I got to tell you this. He said, I just finished my PhD at George Washington University
Oh man.
in AI technology. And I'm like bursting with pride. See, remember, I want to give the assist. I gave that assist to this guy a long time ago, and look what he's done with it.
Yeah.
It's just so thrilling, and so you as leaders and people leaders, you need to look at people and see that you can help them grow and get them to find their purpose, their why, and use their why to grow them. And I think that's the encouragement of just motivation. And sometimes it takes years to come to fruition, but boy, when it does, do you ever feel good about it?
Yeah, and we're going to cover that in our next episode called "Empowering Your Team."
Yeah,
And we're going to really go into depth on how that works, and that's something that I am really big on. Like,
yeah,
how do you enable others to succeed? And sometimes it's a long play.
yeah,
Sometimes you don't get to see the difference you made until a decade later, 2 decades later. Like, I have had people call me back after a year, say, or 2 years, and I consider that a quick win. Like, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah, thank you for helping me through that time. Because of your advice, I was able to," and then fill in the blank here.
yeah,
And it's like, "No, that's all you. I just nudged you. I just gave you some tools, and it was on you to do it better." But one of the things I've found in building teams, before I can build a great team, before I can empower others, I need to know why I want to do it.
yes,
Am I doing this to make myself profitable? Am I doing this because I want you to reciprocate? Am I doing this because I have a deep-seated need as a middle child to validate others? What is it? What is my why? And so Adam Walter's why, as many people know, is to leave it better than you found it. When I was
yeah,
very young, I came across that kind of mentality. I'm huge into camping, and that sign, you'll see it every once in a while, especially in like Rocky Mountain National Forest and stuff,
right,
where clean up the campsite, leave it better than you found it. But I took that and I made it part of my core. So when I do a business, when I'm talking to team members, when I'm talking to my family, like, at my core, I want to leave it better. When I go on a walk with my dog, I'll pick up pieces of trash. I'll pull a weed because I
and there
want
you
it to be better than I left it.
yeah,
And
I
so,
love
like, for you, like, how does somebody find their why so they can be a better leader?
you've really got to look and be truthful with yourself. That internal voice and external voice. A lot of people like to talk a game, but don't necessarily have it going on in their mindset. As a business coach, I find that I'm coaching, problems come up everywhere, all over, whatever the business might be, there's always problems. But at the core of it is the mindset that one has when they deal with problems. And it's the same thing, I think, with establishing our whys and establishing what we're doing and our purpose and so on, is be true to yourself and really be true to who you are and what you want out of life and why. That's the case. I mean, it can be whatever it might be for people. It doesn't have to be acceptable, but you need to be true with yourself about what it is. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to remember.
Yeah, and I think one of the harder things here when I'm helping people find their why is be honest, but don't be ashamed.
Yeah.
And if your why is you want to make a lot of money, okay, that's your why. Don't be ashamed of it. I want to be a 10 millionaire. I want $100 million. But you might need to ask yourself a couple more times, well, why do you want that much money?
Yeah.
Well, I want to leave a great legacy. Okay, now we're starting to dig into some meat and
Yeah.
potatoes.
Oh, we're making some sense.
Why do you want to leave a great legacy? And
Right.
start moving down that list. Now, instead of it just being money motivation, you want to leave a great legacy. So rather than just having cash on hand, what does a legacy mean? How do you leave that behind? What can you do today to lean into that? So, I one of the bigger problems I have when I talk to business owners, like, "What's your exit strategy?" I don't
Yeah.
need an exit strategy. Like,
Yeah.
one way or another, you've got an exit strategy. And you've got to decide if your exit strategy is going to be to get hit by a bus or just pass away someday and leave a mess to everybody. That's one exit strategy, I guess. Is it going to be you're going to have somebody take over for you? Is it going to be that you want to earn enough money to live off residuals? And so this is where I start to get people to ask why,
Yes.
because they don't think of that. They just wanted to run a business. Maybe they didn't mesh well with their last business. This is their only way of them working in tech. Maybe they thought they could do it better than the previous people. Whatever it is, dive into that. Why are you running a company?
And it does take a fair amount of peeling back the layers. I agree with you, Adam, 100%. And that you got to peel it deeper and deeper. And like you say, it starts out with money and ends up with, I want it to be a better world than I left it, like your why, or each place that I go to. Um, I, I find that a trusting relationship is important to be able to challenge one into getting into that sometimes, and so it isn't something that you can uncover instantly. In some cases, yes, but in most cases, I think it takes some time in relationship building and having the right experience and mentoring that goes along with that from varying people that we find in our lives. And it's amazing. It's not, I've done a little work with a guy named Magic Johnson when I was doing his camps. There's a guy that came into, the LA Lakers, not being the leader of the team, but guess what? The nature of how he played and so on became the leader when you had Kareem and, Jamal Wilkes and all those guys on the team that were experienced, but he was a leader because the way he carried himself. And so leaders aren't necessarily always the top guys that got the position. And
Yeah.
you got to be able to see that as a leader and drive those that are leaders in your group above yourself sometimes in certain areas to make sure they all have that common goal kind of thing going, which we'll talk in the next section more about.
Yeah, as I cover, just recently in one of our episodes with Skip, is that leadership is not a title, and you can't just say, "I'm a CEO, so I'm a leader." Like, okay, in one aspect you are,
Yeah.
but just because Adam Walter says he's a tennis coach
Right.
does not mean I know how to coach tennis. There's a world there that Adam has no clue anything about. I can
Yeah.
coach a bit of basketball, I can coach football, I can coach baseball. Don't ask me to coach tennis, but I could give myself the title.
Right.
And if I want to be the best tennis coach in the world, I need to start working on that. I'm a little late to the game here,
Yeah.
but I need to start working on becoming that, just like a leader. If your goal is to become a great CEO, then you need to look into see what do CEOs do? What do great business leaders do? And become that. And then maybe ask yourself what you think that leadership role looks like. The why is a hard practice to go through. I remember as a team one time in a business I was working in, we as a group were trying to define what our why
Yeah.
was.
Right.
And it took us 4 hours as a group of 8 engineers, highly trained. We are not tier 1, we're all tier 3 and 4
Yeah.
engineers. And it took us 3 to 4 hours to figure that out, what our goal was as a team, why we were existing,
Yeah.
and to be able to define that in 1 sentence.
Yeah.
That was a hard exercise. When we were done, we hit the bar
Oh
'cause
yeah.
we were tired.
Yeah. Yeah. That I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that whole process because it's where you want to get. You can get everybody rolling the same way, and thinking that's what. Especially when you have a bunch of bright people that are tend to be a little bit introverted at times, and so on, and don't necessarily see the marketing side of the business as well as you need to.
So let me
You
ask you
mentioned you mentioned business plan or planning earlier. I just want to make mention of the book I'm published or just publishing on September 30th. It'll be released. Um, Achieving peak performance. There's a section in there that talks about three types of plans you should have as a business. Of course, it's the business plan, the operation plan, but the third one's the completion plan. And I've got a whole template and everything built for people when they, buy the book, they can download it and pull it around. But it's really important for people to go through that exit piece, or what does the completion plan look like for them? Because it does get to what you're talking about, and knowing the why and why you're up to it.
yeah.
It
And
has.
we'll post your book in the content comments down below, so people look at the
Oh, I
description down
appreciate
there.
that. I
I'll make
appreciate.
sure that people get a link to your book and like,
Yeah.
why would somebody read your book anyways?
Well, I
Speaking
got
of
a series.
why,
Yeah, yeah. It's the why for that book, the Achieving Peak Performances for it's an entrepreneurial's journey. So basically, from building, running, scaling, and exiting your business on your terms, I've written the whole book describing that. I had a co-author, a lawyer, that covered a lot of the legalese in terms of you set it up as an LLC, an S corp, a C corp, why you want to do that, how to break that down, some of the trademark. But I mostly have the how to build the team, how to structure the business, how to make sure you have your external, internal checkpoints, and so on. A little bit of textbook. The previous book I wrote, though, Peak Experiences, much more in line with kind of your backpacking world and my back country experiences as well. A lot of things where I think time slows down for people when we have really high level experiences in our life, whatever that may be. And when that happens, we comprehend a large amount of information, and that large amount of information doesn't necessarily manifest instantly. And so what I've done is I've written about 12 different examples of that and trying to get people to understand how to take a more in a steeper trajectory out of the peak experiences they have. But what's behind that is the requirement, I think, of deliberate practice. The real peak experience we get are when we put the big practice in before and then it all hits. And
There we
that's
go.
something special. And so that's what the kind of my series of books is kind of featuring. Thanks
Awesome.
for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely put a plug in for you. I like to read pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So, I just consume books, constantly. And I firmly believe that's one of the reasons why I'm able to think outside the box. That's why I come with new ideas. It's 'cause I'm
Yeah.
constantly learning. I'm constantly reading different sources of information. And so challenge yourself with books. Challenge
Yeah.
yourself with different perspectives is really, really important. So we're ending up here on the podcast here. What's your why? Why is your why? Why the why is important. A lot of whys in there. But I just want to pick your brain on a final thought. Almost a warning for people. Like in your experience, given your the scope of life you've had, what do you see other people who don't have a why? We're gonna go the negative here.
You
When you
know,
see somebody who doesn't have a why,
yeah.
you hinted at it earlier. I want to hear from you. Like, what's the negative to this?
I guess part of it is you put it in perspective of your own age bracket in a way. And when I run into people who are in this 60, 55 to 75 age bracket that I'm in, and they're still kind of marching along their corporate structure, follow the rules, follow the way this is the way I've lived, this is the way I'm going to die. That's a little scary for me because there is something else to be done, I think, in most people's lives within, that it usually is discovered because they're worried about money. They
Yeah,
got money over their head that they've got to have money. Well, you know what? Most of the people that are in that age bracket that I'm working with, money should be the last thing they're worried about. If
yeah,
they've worked their life and career, you got to take your social security, etc., whatever. So I think we hold ourselves back in our why sometimes because we're so focused that singularly focused on something that you think's more important than it is.
yeah,
Step
yeah. And
away.
I've told a couple people recently, like, if you don't have a why, then your life relies on luck.
Good point.
And you're
Yeah.
like, why am I so unlucky? Because you don't have a why. You don't have a direction. You're just drifting along wherever the corporation tells you to. You're drifting along wherever the corporation tells you to, or wherever the strongest presence tells you to. And if you have a why, you become that strong presence. And you start getting control of where you're going in life and taking opportunities that are going to lead you to that destination.
Love it. You got it.
So yeah, I never really thought about it. Like once you get a higher in your age, that it becomes more like, well, I've had 50 years and I haven't built anything. So now
Right.
I'm just relying on day to day because I've always have, and this is the life I'm used to. And if I spend those 50 years building towards something, where would I be today? Thank you for coming on, Coach. We're going to do one more session here. We're going to do next week about team building, about managing your team a little bit better and finding a way to empower them, which is a huge opportunity for you as a leader. So, thank you, Coach, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Adam.